Hi there, I'm Tricia at Club Scrap, and thanks for joining me. This is the Typeset Card Kit workshop, and I'm looking forward to making a set of 12 fabulous cards with you. Got my kit ready, and I've printed my instructions. No need for you to print them if you don't want to. You could certainly consult them from a tablet, whatever is handiest for you. And what I'd like to do to begin our class is just set aside everything except the 12 by 12 papers. Get rid of those goodies, maybe leave them in the bag so they don't get misplaced. And then I have ready to go my guillotine trimmer and my accordion pocket file. We'll be sorting everything we trim into one of the first 3 pockets for each set of cards, A, B, and C, and putting any extra little pieces in pocket D for use just in case we want to, do a little extra. So this lip fits underneath my trimmer base, and if you don't have the accordion pocket file, don't worry. Just maintain 3 piles to help you stay organized. I just like to use this because it's easy, and it doesn't require as much horizontal space and as much workspace, because that always seems to be at a premium for me anyway. All right, so let's take this paper that we have here in this beautiful stack, and we're going to sort it in the order we'll use it. So let's start with a blue, and then we want you to find a gold, then a green, and then a red. So that's pretty much a tour of the paper of every color. We're going to repeat that again. So find blue, gold, green, and red. Then we're going to be trimming the 2 prints. So by then you're all warmed up, you can do the prints. So put those face down. Then I want you to find the Cutapart that has the words happy up here, and the one that has a lot of the wood texture on it. So put that one face down. All the prints are face down because we'll just get back to that. So flip everything back over to the blue on the top, stack it neatly, and I set it to my left typically. And the next thing we need to do is find the grain direction of the paper. So I'm gonna push inward on the paper in both directions and see which one seems to be the most flexible. That's kind of this is a little bit harder to push in. This is a little easier. So I'm going to place this so it dips easily from the top to the bottom of my trimmer. It'll be a little easier on this gold sheet. It's not quite as firm of a fiber here. So do you see how it droops more easily in this direction than it does in this one? So I'm going to put it in the trimmer drooping from top to bottom. And we'll do 2 at a time here. We're going to trim a total of 4 sheets the same exact way. So this is a pretty easy one here. Let's start at 9 3/4. And for my newbies, I always want to make sure 9 3/4 is here. Make sure you're not looking at the centimeters, but 9 is over here on the inches. And then to find 3/4, you're going to go left to grow that number. So 9 1/4, 9 1/2, 9 3/4. So 3 columns to the left of the 9. Since we're trimming 2 sheets at a time, I want you to be extra certain that you stabilize before that blade comes down by pushing on the clear bar. And then we'll slide down over to 5, stabilize once again before you slice. Notice how I'm allowing the paper just to sit here to the right. Don't move it if you can help it. Rotate the piece in the trimmer base and cut at 9. These 2 pieces need to be scored. I'll set them aside on my score pal over off camera here. And the other rectangle can be placed right into pocket C or pile C, whatever you're using for your organizing. The next larger strip will trim at 11 1/4. So notice that when I'm finding my measurement, I'm not holding onto the blade and using just my left hand. I like to use both hands. Sometimes I push on this one and I pull on this one, and it's a little easier to be accurate. Once you find 11 1/4, we'll cut there and slide down to 9 1/2. And then 6 3/4. Gather up all the pieces. You got this larger panel, then a smaller rectangle, an even smaller rectangle. All 3 sets of these go in pocket C. And then you do have this little guy. This is an extra. I'm just going to pop that in D. Next, grab this long strip. We got a little bit of a tricky move here, but you can manage. We'll start out at 11 3/4. Then go down to 5 3/4. The piece that's in the trimmer right now, rotate it so it's vertical. and trim at 2. This piece, you'll notice, will cleverly nest onto this one, okay? That's the idea. So all of these pieces that you just created go in pocket C, except these really little scraps. So that's what's left so far. That's not so bad. Let's repeat that whole process now. One more time. We're going to have it dipping easily from top to bottom with the green and also with the red. This is a heavier stock, you're going to notice right away. So just make sure if you push in on it, it's going to push more easily going top to bottom. The reason we care about that is because eventually we're going to fold the paper in that direction, and we want it to have a nice fold. Trim at 9 3/4. Once again, making sure you're flush at the top with the paper, pushing down firmly, and then slide to 5. Rotate and trim at 9. And set this aside to be scored. And the smaller rectangle in C. The next piece will trim at 11 1/4. 9 1/2, and again you can use both hands to steer. 9 1/2 and 6 3/4. So again, you've got your big rectangle, your smaller rectangle, your even smaller rectangle, all of this going into pocket C, and then you have your scrap for D. For the last strip, one more time here, we'll cut at 11 3/4, taking that tiny little piece off, then 5 3/4. Take the piece in the base of the trimmer and rotate it so it's vertical, and trim at 2. Nest up these pieces and pop them in pocket C. We've got a couple of scraps here you can set aside. Now we're going to rotate through all 4 colors with a second diagram, making this project very something that you can duplicate easily. I was going to say duplicatable. Okay, once again, I'll try to find the grain direction. I think it's a little easier to push this way. And for this paper as well, I want it to dip easily from the top of my trimmer base to the bottom. Okay, we'll stack these neatly. Our first cut here is at 11 3/4, making a really tiny little strip. And then all the way down to 6 1/4. And rotate, cut at 10 1/2. These 2 pieces need to be scored, so I'll set them aside. And this is a scrap for pocket D. Take the next strip. We'll start out at 11 and then 7. Take this piece, set it aside to be scored. And before you file this guy, I want you to trim it horizontally at 5 1/4, pocket A. And before you file this guy, I want you to trim it horizontally at 5 1/4, also for pocket A. And you've got just some little scraps. If you want to keep these long strips, you could, but I don't know if you'll find a home for them here. Let's repeat all that. So take the piece, make sure it dips top to bottom. Repeat for the red. This one's really heavy. I think it wants to go this way. Okay. Once again, we're going to make that tiny little strip by trimming at a huge number. So 11 3/4. We're way over here to make a tiny little piece over here. Then down to 6 1/4. And a rotation now at 10 1/2. Set these aside to be scored. This one goes in pocket D. We have this larger piece here. We'll trim at 11 and 7. This piece needs to be scored, so we'll set that aside. And this one we need to trim. I don't know how many times I have forgotten to trim this guy. This starts at 5 1/4 here, pocket A. And the next one also, this little piece, it's a little 1-inch piece, also at 5 1/4 for A. And you can set these aside Moving on to the prints already, and we're on page 2 of our instructions. For this first print, we'll cut at 11 1/4. So 11, go left to find 11 1/4, and then 6. Rotate the 6-inch piece. You're gonna love this. We're gonna trim on all the even numbers. So it's 10, 8, 6, 4, and 2. All of the pieces you created go in pocket B. Nothing in there so far, so looks like we should be putting something in there. All right, the next strip we're going to trim horizontally. We'll start at 10, then 7 1/2, 5, and 2 1/2. Now, find 4 pieces that are the same. They should be exact. Yes, all of those go in pocket A. Then you're going to have another little extra piece left over. That's for D, as is this long strip. Maybe you can find a home for that. And now we have our last regular print here. This time we need to care about the grain. So I'm going to find once again that the grain of the paper dips easily in this direction. And when you place it in the trimmer, I want it to be dipping from the left to the right, because it will eventually be folded in that direction. First cut here is at 10, and then 6. Rotate. We'll trim at 11, 8 1/4, 5 1/2, 2 3/4. Gather up the 4 pieces that are the same, and those are going to go in pocket B. There should be a little, yes, here it is, a little scrap left over for D. Then our next piece will trim at 9, 6, and 3. Gather up the 4 pieces, pocket A, and this last piece, trim in half at 6 inches. And this goes in pocket B again. Just 2 more pieces left to cut. These are the Cutaparts, and there are instructions on the outside to remove the paper past that guideline. So to do that, I'll place it in my trimmer, and for the first cut I make, it's a little bit hard to see down here at the bottom corner. The mark goes lower than my blade just because of its size, so I'm just going to cut generously on that first rotation. Then I rotate, and I'm going to line up that hash mark again with the blade. I can see it at the top here and at the bottom, and if you need to do some leveling, go for it at that turn. Now when I rotate here, I'm level, and I can find my mark at top and bottom. Rotate. This time I can look at the 12-inch mark over here on the left, and it lines up pretty nicely over here on the right. And one last rotation to clean up that first initial cut at 12 inches. And I'm in business with a perfect 12 by 12. Get rid of those little scrappies. And now I'm going to start cutting. Make sure that this alphabet is on the far right edge here before you begin cutting. And our first number is 11 3/4. 11 3/4. Always stabilizing too, right? I let the paper pile up in the way it lands, and I'll help you deal with it one sheet at a time. Slide down to 10, and then 8 1/4, 5 1/2. Now rotate. We'll cut at 9 3/4, 7 1/2, 5 1/4, and 3. Now this started out just being a scrap. I kind of just left it as a scrap. If you want to find a home for these cute little cut-apart letters, go for it. Or maybe make a bonus card with it. I'm going to put this in pocket D for now, as I didn't use it in any specific card. Then you have all these fun pieces here. We'll put those in pocket B. On this strip, I'm going to trim at 11 with the word happy on the far right. then 8 1/4, 5 1/2, and 2 3/4. Gather the 4 squares. Those are used in card set A, and the happy, I think I used it in B, so I'll just pop it in there. Place the next strip in the trimmer with the word joy on the right. We'll cut at 11 and 5 1/2. These 2 pieces, pocket C, and we get to repeat that. Oh, I'm sorry, I'll tell you, probably wondering where the joy goes, in C as well. Now make sure wish is on the right. We've got 11 again, and 5 1/2 again. These 2 pieces, as well as the wish, that would have been a scrap, but Jack put art there, so we found a home for it. This goes in pocket C. This piece I didn't end up using, but you certainly could work it in. I'll pop it in D just in case. We get to do the perimeter one more time, so I'll just place this in, cut generously here, do a rotation, and start fine-tuning this piece. All 4 edges need to be trimmed perfectly. Get rid of your scraps. And make sure that the lightest colored wood is on the far right before you start trimming here. We'll cut at 10 and then 7 1/4. 4 1/2. Rotate. Cut that little scrap off the end there, so that means 11 1/2. 9 3/4. 8, 6 1/4, 4 1/2, and 2 1/4. Then rotate this piece so it's horizontal and trim again at 2 1/4. Both of these, pocket A. Grab the next pair and do the same thing. Cut at 2 1/4 horizontally. Pocket A on those squares. And now you have 1, 2, 3, 4 innies for pocket C. And this little guy, D. This piece we get to just trim in half at 6. Pocket B. This one the same thing, in half at 6 for pocket B. And here we go. On this last one now, we'll start at 9, then 6, and 3. Gather them up. Pocket B for our final filing here. I'm going to get rid of my trimmer and grab my score pal. So this is the way the stack landed for me. I'm going to start at the top. I'm going to find these shorties, and I want you to just dig a little bit and find their mates, because remember we did it 4 times with everything. So here we have the 4 smallest pieces. They're going to measure 5 1/2 by 7. And when you place them horizontally into the score pal, I want you to score at 4 1/4. So when I do that, just make sure you engage in the notch at the 4 1/4 measurement. Press down while you pull your scoring tool toward you. I use a ball tip stylus. You could also use the bone folder that it comes with it, or your own bone folder. Experiment a little bit, especially with the amount of pressure that you use. Again, I'm at 4 1/4. Make sure you make a nice score line so that you can find it later when you're folding your paper. And all 4 of these pieces are filed in pocket A. Then we'll move on to the larger pieces. These are 10 1/2 by 6 1/4. We need to do 2 different steps of scoring for this. So the first number is 2 1/4, and then 8 1/4, and then flip the paper from bottom to top and score it 3 3/4 and 6 3/4. Okay, so 4 score lines, 2 bumps, 2 divots. Let's repeat that again. 2 1/4, 8 1/4, flip, 3 3/4, 6 3/4. And we get to get more practice with that with the next one. 2 1/4, 8 1/4. Flip, 3 3/4, 6 3/4. And our final, 2 1/4, 8 1/4, flip, 3 3/4, 6 3/4. Okay, that's the last of those. And we can place these in pocket B. Our folder is getting really nice and full here. This last strip, this is going to be a 5 by 9. Yeah, it can't even stay up on its own anymore. 5 by 9. I want you to score this at 7 horizontally. So when I say horizontally, I mean place it in your score pal horizontally while you score. It's at 7 for all of these. I know these look really weird, these score lines. They might not make sense now, but I promise they will later. All of these go in pocket C. And now we are ready to make some cards. Let's do it. We'll begin by taking everything out of pocket A, now that we have everything in there. Or go ahead and find your pile A. Maybe you had some Post-it notes or something that you used. And let's start by taking the card base that we scored, and we'll fold it. So what I want you to do is find the bump of that score line and bury it on the inside of the fold. So if you're brand new to card making, maybe that's a new concept for you, burying the bump of the score line. A lot of people spend most of their life putting the bump of the score line on the outside of the fold, but that's actually not the way professional stationers do it. So even Hallmark does it this way. They score and the divot goes on the outside, the bump on the inside. Okay, so I'll lay out my cards. We'll start with the gold, then we'll go red, then we'll green and blue. Now I initially do this myself with the colors, and at that time is when I sort of decide what colors I want. Doesn't mean you have to go with the colors I used or arrange them the way that I did. It's your own card, so do it however you wish. I'm going to distribute the largest card panels to these bases by varying the colors. So on the gold, I'm going to add blue, and then for the red, I'll add gold, and then red to the green, and green to the blue. Now, I kind of had a system. I think my cards are set up in the same way they were when I made these, so that's kind of cool. My apologies. I just realized I forgot to have you score something. Thought I was done with this, but I'm not. There's a series of 4 3x4s in your pocket. Place them horizontally into the score pal with the printed side facing up and score at 3. Sorry about that. I was going to try to remember. When I was trimming it, I remembered, but then I didn't remember. So score those at 3, and we're done, I think, for good now with that guy. Okay, so each one of these gets one of these scored pieces, and each card gets a larger panel. You can see that's going to fit on the outside of the card. Each one receives a square that's just plain, and then a larger square that's decorative, doesn't matter which one, and then a little strip of color. That way we can incorporate a third color into this card. So red, green, blue, and gold. Now your kit came with envelopes. So take one of those smallest size envelopes and put everything from the 4th card into that envelope. And maybe what you could do is also dig into your kit a little bit. And I want you to find these tiny little tags. They're stringed tags. And take 3 tags, 1, 2, 3. Pop 3 tags into this envelope as well. Set that aside. Here we have our next envelope for this card. And what I want to do is just make one card with you, because all the other cards are made the same way. So once you make one, you'll use that as your model for the other 3. Okay, so this can go into this envelope, and let's make that first one together. Otherwise, this would be a really long video. It's already a long video. Okay, I want to show you kind of a fun way to begin here, and it's with this piece and the red strip. Take my grid ruler here. I'm going to add some adhesive to the red strip. I just wanted to add a pop of color. I'm going to add this about 3/4 of an inch from the edge of my card. So I'm using my grid ruler, 3 solid cubes here. Helps me find 3/4 of an inch and make sure it's nice and level. with my paper. Then I have a whole generous portion of this beautiful blue ribbon that's kind of like a suede texture. And I'm going to trim off a piece that's a little longer than my card. Grab some cellophane tape. I always keep my tape in one of these guys so it can sit comfortably on my work surface without me having to hold it, pick up anything to dispense the tape. It just sits there. And I'll add the ribbon tails, secure those on the back of the card, or the panel rather. And then I can add my panel to this flap, and that's done. I'm not sure if this is the order I explained it in the instructions, probably not, but that's okay. It all gets done eventually. This is for order matters, so I'm gonna go ahead and fold this, the bump of the score lines on the inside. I'll take my bone folder, give that a little burnish. And then I've created like a flap, right? Now here's my panel for the inside. It's vertical, and I want to position it kind of upper right center, not at the top, not at center. I don't think. I like it to be the upper right. Okay, so flip this over, and I'm going to pull that tab away and just put some adhesive there and put it back. Then I'll put adhesive on the whole thing and open my card so that this larger flap is on the left and this is on the right. I love these split flap cards. They give me lots of different creative options. You can also take this piece and you can add it to the inside of the card. And I added it to this flap rather than to the card base itself. That's up to you. Now we have these 3 cute little tags, and I'm going to position them so that the thread goes off to the left. Of course, everything's designer's choice. I'm going to take a little bit of our bookbinding glue because I feel like it's the easiest way, and I'm going to adhere this to the right side of the square within the frame. So I'll add just a little, and I'm going to add the bottom one. And then it gives me a little time to adjust, right? If I use a liquid glue rather than a little piece of ATG or something. Then I can add my middle piece. Maybe while that's drying, I will go shopping for the sentiment I want to use for this card. Now here I have this great big sheet of really fun sentiments. I had a blast putting this together. I spent hours on it, just with all the sentiments I've kind of been wanting, but sometimes they're maybe a little too snarky or a little too crazy to have on an official card. But here you can skip the ones you don't like, use the ones you like. I'm going to use the one in here that says, love you most. Okay. So you can cut these with your trimmer, or you can do it this way, like with a ruler and craft knife and cutting mat. So I've got love you most, the end, cut out of this strip. Some of the strips have multiple words. You can puzzle those on, and I'll show you in a minute how I did that, but I'm going to use the end. Now I'm using scissors here for the rest of the story here. So I'll just trim off the extra, and I'm going to trim these words apart. Love you most. Now here, I found the kind of the fastest way is I can just add a little bookbinding glue to each tag and come through and just stick it on there. You could edge this with ink to even create a little more contrast. Love you most. Isn't that cute? Okay, now my tags are kind of glued on, so I'm going to take the string, and sometimes I found if I use the tip of scissors to separate the ends, and I can spread them out a little bit, bring it around to the back, and I'm going to take a little piece of tape and just secure that. I don't know if I got it. I'm going to try again. Okay, flip it over and do the second one. So I've got the string here. Separate with the tip of my scissors. You could use tweezers, whatever. I just found it's kind of easier if you just have a little help. And whip it around. Tape. The last one, same thing. Oh, it's so cute. Flip this around and tape the last one. Okay, now I have the front of my card ready to go. Love you most. Oh, it's so cute. You could pop dot this if you wanted to. I'm just gonna keep it nice and one-dimensional here and center this onto the printed panel. And I designed this to be a smaller panel on the front, the larger panel on the inside to cover more. I didn't want to cover the print. For the inside of the card, our ending sentiment is the end. Love you most, the end. And you could add a hello there, or text me later, all good, or congratulations, anything you want. So this is the world your oyster creatively using these fun little sentiments. And we do have the washi tape. Be mindful of that as well. You could add some washi tape to the inside of the card if you wanted to. Just a cute little piece, you know, just to add a little something. It's up to you. I mean, you can do whatever you want, of course, because it's your own card. But isn't that adorable? That's the love you most. Now, I'm going to show you the other ones. I'll use the envelope here for my sample, set that aside with the others, and give you a tour of the originals. Now, this is where I used, it was me, I let the dogs out. And so I doubled up. I had to go a little wider on these letters, but it worked out. Okay, then the inside, with thinking of you. Here I tried, you're entirely bonkers. But I'll tell you a secret, all the best people are. That's a quote from Alice in Wonderland. Love that. Another favorite of mine. I hadn't had the idea to secure the ribbons or the strings yet, so this one doesn't have them wrapped. Sorry, I said you were old. I thought you knew. Happy birthday. And then lastly, still hot, just comes in flashes. Let the good times roll. And again, the greetings are yours to decide, and you have this whole entire sheet of tons and tons and tons of options that I think you'll get a kick out of some of them. My favorite is, wore my red shirt to Target. Long story short, I'm covering for Debbie this weekend. Some fun with that too. All right, let's move on to set B. Now let's empty pocket B, all of its contents. This is a fun little card. And you've got all these different pieces. If you want, you know, every time you start a card, you might want to just sort things into order by size so you can find things easily. Little things here, and our card bases. I'm just going to spread these out. We've got the blue, the gold, the green, and the red. I'll show you how to fold the blue in when we make it together. Then every card, you see we have the prints, the printed panels that are kind of wide. Each card gets one of those, and there are only 4. Then you have printed panels that are a little narrower. Every card gets 2 of those. I call this process the deal. Then you have, again, just graphics. It doesn't matter what goes on what card. For the outer sentiments, we'll do the secret to staying young on the top and happy birthday to you on the bottom. This little happy goes on this card here. And then we'll do wishing you lots of happy on your birthday, and then may your birthday bring as much joy as you give. Find the next largest envelope. This is an A6 size. And I'm going to insert the card into the envelope like this. So when you go back to finish your card, you can follow your model and do all 4. You can either do that immediately after, you know, just pause the workshop and just put them all together right away while you're fresh and you're at it, or you can set them aside and then later on, maybe when you go to an event or a prep, all of your intellectual work is done, and then you just have the fun of doing the assembly, which, you know, maybe you prefer that. Okay, so now we have to follow our rules about folding. Remember to bury the bump here. So here's my bump. I'm going to bury it by putting this on the inside. And this is an extremely heavyweight cardstock, so you want to be burnishing. Here's another bump, so I'll bury it. Now if I flip the card over, I can see another bump here, so I'll bury that. And that just creates this kind of like a pleat or a gusset. And then I'll bury this one. And magically, I really worked. I made so many prototypes of this card size because I wanted these pieces to meet on one side and have the pop-up on the other and have the outcome be the exact 4 1/4 inch size I wanted without any difficult measurements at which to trim. And then after, I don't know how many samples, I finally arrived there. So you'll notice right away that this panel fits the larger pop-up in the middle, and then the 2 wings get a narrower panel. And I think we're pretty safe to go ahead and put these down onto the card base. If you want to do any ribbon additives to these, you'll want to do that, of course, before you attach. but I love the efficiency of this. I can just add my adhesive to all three. And so the narrow one, remember, goes on the wing, and it should nest in there perfectly. Nest in the wing. I love how this paper doesn't have an orientation. It can go up, it can go any direction, and you're good to go. And then the centerpiece. And you've got, it's all nested perfectly. So again, that formula is going to allow you to repeat this magic with anything that you want. Now I'm going to take this other little graphic piece, it happens to be the same one that was on my original, and center that in here. And then we have this, The Secret to Staying Young. I'm going to grab some of my ribbon, going with the red. I like to cut at an angle, get a nice fresh cut there, a pretty small little piece in a, I think it's the trapezoid shape, I always forget, fold it in half, and that way the angles of the ends are running the same direction. Then take a stapler and get that ribbon stapled on there. And when you attach this, you can do it so that it flies off the right side of the pop-up, but make sure it doesn't go past the edge of the card or it won't fit into the envelope. When you add your adhesive, add it to the left edge of the sentiment only, leaving this area free so you don't glue your card shut, right? So flatten the card and attach this. You can kind of go close to the edge, but I like to have a little reveal of the print and of the blue. And that way when the card is standing, I'm sure you can't see that, when the card is standing, it kind of wings out to past the edge, which looks kind of neat, right? Now on the bottom half of my sample that you're looking at in the instructions probably, you'll see a strip of paper here. And that's where I incorporated one of the mini paper clips in the collection. So like, let's say I've got this one. I would have bought you a plant, but you already have too many. That's adorable. I'll use my ruler again, and I'm going to cut that off there. And you can use your trimmer for this as well. Just eyeball your cuts. And then I'm going to go into my bin of scraps here. And I do happen to have this little piece. So I can take my sentiment here. I would have bought you a plant. Let me cut off the end there. I know you get the idea, but I thought, well, maybe we'll just go ahead and get this card completely done. I would have bought you a plant. This is my daughter Amanda. She has too many plants. I'm going to send her this card. She will love it. I'm going to put that kind of off kilter a little bit just because. And then I think I'm going to tear this end off just because. And then I'll add one of my cute little paper clips. Ooh, those are so adorable, aren't they? Yeah, there we go. I'll just add a little adhesive to the middle and add it to the bottom of the card. That's a little bonus, right? Like, it's not prescribed. You can leave it off or you can add it. Now flip the card over and I want to show you a fun little thing you can do here. You can start over here and I'm going to line up my card with my grid on my cutting mat and just start. Oh, I didn't line it up close enough here. Okay, so I'm going to run it across and then just try to end at the same spot on the grid on the left to make sure I stay level. That's your bonus tip of the day. Burnish it nice and smoothly here, and then I'm just going to clip off the end and this end. And I've got a cute little decorative back on my card and a sentiment. So I can take this and add that to the inside of my card. Isn't that sweet? So from either side, you got plenty of space here. You got plenty of real estate for decorating. You can even add a little mat here with one of your scraps from the D pocket. So that, you know, you can have a little spot for writing, or you use a white or a metallic pen of some kind to write your sentiment on this dark blue card base. On the other cards, Same thing, I didn't add the bonus sentiment to either side. Here, I added the word happy with a paper clip, just slapped it on there, and switched to the green ribbon at the top. Here I just ran my washi tape down the left edge. And on the final card, just the green ribbon with a sentiment here. This is a card, an actual card from the sentiment strip. Again, you have so many options there. You're gonna have a ball, I promise. Now it's time for set C, and you know what that means. Empty the pocket. And wow, do we have a load in here. But I promise it will all make sense before you know it. It's a good idea here to begin by just sorting everything out a little bit by size so you can make sense of everything. All right, I have all of this organized, and now let's do our deal. We'll start out with the green card base on top. Now these are the ones that are scored at that 7-inch mark. And then we'll have the red card base. And once again, this is just my color selections. You can alternate these colors any way you like. So I have these 4 card bases, green, red, blue, and gold. Let's find those largest panels, and let's add a red panel to this card. Gold, green, and then blue. So we're just diversifying all the color that we have here, right? Now let's find another of these rectangular size panels of the largest size of those two. I want you to find the panel that's the same color as the card base. So the green, red, blue, and gold. Next, let's nest the other rectangular panel that's slightly smaller than the one we just distributed with blue, green, gold, and red. And then there's going to be an even smaller panel. It's about this size. It's 4 3/4 inches wide. It's a little bit narrower than the card base. I'm looking for the same color we just distributed here. So let's go with blue, green, gold, and red. Now we're going to start working with our hinge panel. These are the largest, skinnier. They're pretty long though. So that's what we're going to do next. And this is going to feature the color we haven't used yet on this card. So we've got the gold here, blue, red, and green. And we'll nest again with red, yellow, or gold rather, green, and blue. Now we're going to do some sentiments. We've got believe there is good in the world going on the top 2 cards with oh happy day and then get well. For this first one, let's use especially because you're in it, and then you're so special on this one. Congratulations, you're amazing, and then get well goes with you're needed. That should do it for all of the pieces that were in that pocket. So let's grab our A7 envelopes. So this is a 5x7 card. It fits into an A7 envelope. That's card 4. We'll get all these pieces in here for 3, 2, and let's make card number 1 together. We can begin with our card base. Once again, look for the bump of the score line here and make sure you're burying the bump inside the fold. I'm sorry if you know, and I keep repeating it, but it's good to remind, good for a reminder. Now with adhesive, I will add some to the back of this largest panel, and that will nest onto the inside of our card base, inside the flap. There we go. And then we have this pairing here. So this is going to end up becoming the bottom of our card. Before I nest this on anything, I'm going to take some of the red ribbon. This has a beautiful metallic bronze edge, and I'm going to trim a length that's a little bit wider than this blue panel. Remember, this is the rectangular shaped panel that's kind of wide, and we're going to do our chain link double bow here. Remember that ribbon does have a grain, so if I turn the ribbon every which way, I can kind of tell which way it wants to go. So I'll fold it in half, and I'm grabbing a piece of tape, and I'll try to make it so that the loop of the ribbon or the folded edge is kind of around the middle of this piece, and then I'll just tape it on the back. And then I'll take the other ribbon, once again checking my grain. And I know it looks kind of weird, but I'll loop the end of this ribbon into the loop we just created and fold it in half. And then while supporting on the left, you're going to give that a little tug to beautify that piece of ribbon here. And I'll put that in the back with some cellophane tape. And now I can nest this panel onto my card. Now this is going to end up being a horizontal card, so I want to make sure that this gets attached like so to this green panel, okay? Then there's another really skinny blue panel. I'm going to add that to the left flap of the card. Next, we can prepare our sentiment. Now you might notice on the cards in the image that you have that the edges are distressed. I used a paper distressing tool, and you can just kind of do away with that edge. I don't know if we still carry these, if we still have our tools in stock, but these are pretty readily available. And you can just scrape away the edges for a little bit of an extra interest, or not. You can skip this step if you want to. I'll get rid of all those little frayed edges. Get out the vacuum cleaner later. And now I will nest this little guy onto my red panel. And if you wanted to, you could take some foam adhesive on any of these layers, on any card really. I like to and make the sentiment, you know, pop up a little bit. So I cut them in half to get double use out of them, and then I just align the straight edge with the edge of my panel here. And then I can make this sentiment pop a little bit more. Not a whole lot of dimension on here. And these foam adhesive circles are thin enough that it shouldn't affect your postage by any stretch. So with that, I can pop this off of the gold panel here. Okay. Next, I'm gonna kind of stack my cards. So this is the free-floating panel. It's not attached to anything. Eventually, it will be aligned with the left and right edges of this, or the bottom and top, whatever you want to do it, of this card. And the sentiment's gonna fit in the middle. And I found it's easiest to attach the sentiment before the hinge has been attached. So I'm gonna go ahead and add adhesive to this and realign this again here. Just make sure the sentiment is right side up. And I'm going to center this into the space that's exposed. Cool. Next, I'll take this piece and I'm going to apply adhesive to the outside edges and maybe just a little bit more on this right edge since it's going on the wider side of the panel. I hope this makes sense. I keep tapping to align here. And then this just will cover my sentiment, and there your panels are hinged together. For the inside, you can take some of this tape and run it along either the bottom edge, you know, however you want to do this. This is entirely your call. You can omit this and just save the tape for the outside of your envelope. Your call. So it looks kind of neat. And I added a little special touch. I don't need to show you how to do it because I've been showing you, but here you can see on the inside, I took the You're the Bee's Knees from the sentiment strip, and I actually think I mounted it to one of these really skinny scraps. In fact, yes, I did, and added a paper clip to it, just the sentiment of my choice, and it still peeks out here in the window. So cute. And that's it for that card sample. So super easy. The next card is the same sentiment, the same type of technique, but with a different ribbon here. And then I nested the Joy Cutapart that we allocated. I think maybe I forgot to mention that that was on this card. My apologies, but we do have that Cutapart in your folder. I nested it onto that gold color and clipped it, added it with the foam adhesive. I did a little something, it did a twist here. So twist the ribbon, add it, the ends behind the panel before you nest it. And here you can do the paper clipped wish, and I did nest that with a blue scrap. Finally, the Get Well. This is, just kind of a double crisscross. I just had so much of the blue ribbon, so I just wrapped it around 3 times at an angle. Love how that turned out. And then I clipped on the little missing your face sentiment on the inside of the card. I love these. Just so completely adorable and fun. So the typeset cards, these are great, but we also have pages as well. So if you'd like to scrapbook or make projects, make sure you check out that typeset page kit as well. And let's make those pages together too. We even have a Father's Day page kit cut apart option. So if you want to feature your dad on these cool masculine style colors, we've got a great solution for you there as well. Thanks for joining me today, and I look forward to seeing you in your next workshop very soon.